And where was your first official martial art lesson? What year, what style, and where?
Well, I finally found out that they had a young man teaching judo in the wrestling room at the downtown YMCA in St. Louis. I got there and I took a lesson from him, and he told us what all you could do. You could throw, you could pin, you could choke, you could lock, stuff like that. And he says, and you can choke if they. And I said, well, how do you know when to stop? He said, well, they'll submit. He says, but he says a lot of guys won't submit. And he says you have to just choke them out. And I says, you mean unconscious? And he says, yeah. I says, what's it feel like to be choked out? Well, come here.
Right.
So I got choked out my very first lesson.
How old were you then?
Probably 16.
16,
Possibly
wow.
17.
Okay.
I think 16.
Yep.
I'm not sure.
And what year do you think would that?
That would have had to have been about 53.
1953.
Yeah.
Great.
52 or 53.
52, 53. Yep.
Like that. So, at any rate, he choked me out, but I never missed a class. And I only got about a month's worth of lessons in judo before he got shipped out, because he, like I say, he was in the Air Force over in Scott Base in Illinois at Belton or something.
So he left. And what happened after that? Did you continue in judo or do karate, or what did you do?
There was no one else to train with there, so
Right.
I started wrestling.
Wrestling, yep, that was popular.
So I started picking up some wrestling, and I was doing pretty good at that until we wrestled a blind school. And every one of us got our ass kicked.
Right.
Those blind guys are better than people that had 4 eyes, you know.
The classic.
And everybody but our coach did. He was a national collegiate NCAA heavyweight champion. And I finally fought him one time. It's kind of interesting. I'll tell it later, though. When he and I fought for the regional championships, I won lightweight, he won heavyweight.
In wrestling?
Yeah.
Was it?
No,
Yeah.
not wrestling,
No.
in judo one time.
Judo one time, cool, great.
But then after that, I didn't get to train anywhere for it might have been 51, whatever.
Okay.
And,
It's going back a while.
Yeah, it was.
Just 6 years after the war finished, wow.
But at any rate, I heard that a guy named Kurth had opened up a dojo in Gaslight Square. What happened was, it wasn't Gaslight Square, then it was just over on Olive Street. But a tornado came through in St. Louis just after that, and just wiped out several city blocks of St. Louis. And so, at any rate, I was going to go down there and train, but it got wiped out. And it turned into Gaslight Square, and that's the Crystal Palace, where Smother Brothers and several other places got their chance. That's where a lot of guys got into, especially folk singing, folk singers, and that's where actually where the hippies revolution kind of started. You know, they're more or less like the Bohemians, as they called them in France, and then they were became hippies for some reason. I don't know why.
Right.
And
do you remember your first when you started competing? When did you actually start competing in tournaments? When was that?
Well, this Kurth guy ends up opening up that must have been I must have just been 15 or 16 the first time with Chuck. I don't know. But anyway, Kurth opens up a dojo, catty corner across the police station, from where I eventually started working with several years later. And so anyway, and I found out about him there, and I went out and talked, and walked in, and I said, I trained with Chuck Much. I said, I'd like to train with you. Actually, he and Chuck had the one together before they shipped Chuck out.
Okay.
They had, or something, I don't know what they were, or they were going to, and ended up just in Bob doing it, whatever.
Right.
But anyway, he was out in across Page and Union, catty corner from the 12th District Police Station. And I walked in, I said, I trained with Chuck Much, and he says, so? You're really hardcore, dude. I mean, he was a Navy commando. Most people don't know about the Navy commandos during World War II, right?
Right.
A lot of places there was when the Marines always bragged about hitting the beaches first. Well, then after the Marines hit the beaches first, the UDT started hitting the beaches first, and they put up a sign a couple of times on some of the islands, Saipan or Tinian or something like that. They put a sign up, canvas thing about 20, 30 feet long, said, United States Marines, welcome to Tinian, for example. He said, and to show that, and then it was signed United States UDT. And after that, UDT came aboard, came on one night, or one day, I guess, or whatever it was, and it said, UDT, welcome to Saipan, for example. I think it was later in the war, it was different islands. I'll just use that for an example. And signed it, U.S. Navy Commandos, but they were unarmed. They could carry a knife, but they couldn't carry a gun, because if they, started a fight, they'd get wiped out, because they were just Jap infested. But they were the first recon that I think we ever had.
Wow.
At least in the Pacific, anyway.
Yeah.
Rangers recon in
Right.
Europe,
Yeah, that was in Europe.
Right. So I told him, I said, well, I'd like to train with you. He was real hardcore and kind of a wise ass in a way, but I learned more from him and my dad than did all the rest of the instructors I had put together.
Wow. And how many years did you train with him for altogether?
Probably 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years.
But anyway, what he said with me, he said $75 down and $17 a month. I said, oh. Hell, I had just gotten married. I had a kid, and I don't know if I had a kid by then or not. I think I did, but I can't remember. But anyway, I didn't have that kind of money. I said, well, can I make the 75 in payments? Yep. 15 a month you get it paid, 17 a month after that. So I got like that. But what happened was, pretty soon he moved his dojo out to almost right across from University City, and the street was called Lemon Street, and the dojo was in St. Louis, and across the street, the filling station and restaurant, and they were in University City. University City always had they were Class A wrestling championships most of the time. They're really good. And so anyway, I moved out there, and Bob traded me lessons. I remodeled the whole building for him to make a new dojo.
Because you had done the carpentry and you worked with your hands. Yep.
Yeah, later I became a carpenter.
Right.
Because my dad and I started the carpenter when I was 17. I made a German in 1 year, or maybe it was 16, I guess it was. Anyway, I made German when I was 18, and master carpenter when I was like 30 or something like this. Something between German and journeyman and master carpenter. I can't remember what. What the hell with that? Anyway, I trained there for a while, and he had a dojo tournament one day. And in those days, when you went to a tournament, there were no big tournaments in judo. And so we, this had to be a little earlier than that, because I remember the first World Championships in 1953 in Chicago. But at any rate, I fought, and I won the white belt division. I think I won 7 or 8 fights that night. And you would go, most of the time we'd go someplace, you just took your sleeping bag, if you had one, or a blanket or something, a pillow. You slept in the dojo that night and fought in a dojo tournament that night. Or if you went, and it kind of rolled over to where if you went to a big tournament, I can remember a couple of times down here sleeping in Allen's dojo when I come to fight in the USA. That was 10 years later. But anyway, I won the tournament, and Bob wants a really hardcore guy. And as I walked out the door, I reached back to close it, and he says, "Harrison." I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "I don't want to see you coming in the dojo with that white belt again." I thought, what the hell did I do? And I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "Diet green." "Yes, sir."
There you go. Hey, that's your grading.
So I stopped in a kind of what were called confectionaries in those days. They kind of precursors to 7-Elevens and the kind of stores that we have now. And I bought a package of green dye, and I stayed up to about 2 o'clock in the morning dyeing my belt green to wear it back to the dirt. In fact, all of us would, you didn't have to wear the belt. If you dyed it yourself, the gi turned green or brown or whatever from the belt. Just a sweat. You didn't have to wash them together. So
that's awesome. And then from there, how many years did you compete for, and how many championships? What were your major championship wins in that time? What's your most memorable?
Didn't win any big tournaments in judo until then, but we were under Chicago Yodanshikai from the Japanese at, Denver, Colorado. Around Denver, Colorado was the biggest relocation camp we had for the Japanese during World War II. Chicago was second.
Right.
Around Chicago.
So, of course, the karate started up from instructors and coming over. That's great.
Well, that's how I got started in karate then.
Yes.
When I was working at Curse Dojo, I was teaching a class by myself one night. Bob was, he probably got 3 or 4 hours sleep a night. He was probably used to that from being a commando anyway.
Oh.
But what he would do was he'd get up and be at work at 7:30 in the morning. He was a printer. I mean, worked in a printing shop. Those old-fashioned printing shops, like I think one guy's name was Gutenberg. Bob knew him real well. But at any rate, then he'd come out and open up his dojo, teach the beginners. He wouldn't. He'd go in and take a nap. He'd go in and sleep. And Mike and George Rich, 2 of his brown belts, and a guy named, I can't remember his name. He was a real badass. But they would teach the the beginners class, and then Bob would come out and teach the advanced class. And advanced class was green belt and above. So he did that for a while. But then I got to be the instructor, and many times then he started a self-defense class, and mostly we just using jiu-jitsu. Judo and jiu-jitsu, basically. Judo came from jiu-jitsu in the first place. So, anyway, we're doing that, and this guy, I was teaching a class that night while Bob was in there sleeping, and he'd go from after sleeping, he'd go play in a hillbilly band, and bounce at the same time.
Wow.
He was a bouncer.
Yeah.
He was a head bouncer, and he played his clarinet or saxophone. I think it was a clarinet. Played in the band, and when the things got rowdy, he threw people out. So anyway, this big guy comes in called Ed Siglowski. He's about I'd say 6'5", there, probably 2 1/4 from there. And the first thing he said, he walked to the door, and I walked down and asked him if I could help him, and he said, "Anybody here do karate?" I said, "What?" Bob and I had bought a book, Masuyama's.
Yes.
What is karate? And then later on, This is Karate. But This is Karate hadn't came out yet. And so we were reading it, and it was Karate, K-rate. And we would spar.
Right.
Before that, we would spar, and what we call jiu-jitsu sparring, because in judo, they have atewaza, which is striking and kicking for self-defense. And so we would put that together and some of the things that we saw in the book. And we didn't know. We thought this was, they have an inside block, which is ridiculous, like this, from in here. And we thought that was the way they were going to fight, like John L. Sullivan.
Yeah.
Their fist up like that.
So what was your major, after that with the tournament, what was your first major win, do you think, in the championship?
Well,
what was
let me
your...
finish saying
sorry.
about Ed. Then we'll get to that.
Ed Eltsigoski.
It's kind of
Actually, I'll just go back.